couple months ago, I met a kindred spirit named Michael Brian David, and we've been in some great conversations since then. Today, you're stepping into one of those riffs. 2 hours of us diving deep into identity, purpose, curiosity, connection, and all the messy, beautiful things that make life meaningful. We got into how dialogue shapes who we become, why diverse perspectives matter, the art of giving and receiving advice, the power of community, and what it really means to live in the present. It's reflective, playful, honest, and full of all those little insights that sneak up onto you. So here it is. Two humans trading stories, questions, and ideas in real time. I hope you enjoy. I hope this is one of many conversations.
Absolutely.
And I wanted to just take like an hour today and see where things go. But I also, in the theme of, I don't actually know you that well. We are the two Michael D's with three first names, right?
Yeah.
And let's start off with Michael Brian David. Tell me and others who you are. What are you about? However you want to answer that.
Whoa. So, Michael Brian David, I am a magic manifester in this body, helping remind people of their true light and gift to the universe, right? That's probably the best way I can put it without doing the labels and stuff. That's essentially that's the essence of who I am, what I live for. Yeah, and in South Florida, born and raised in Miami Beach. Family is all from Chilean descent, so South America. Beyond that, Spanish grandfather and then German grandfather on the other side. So born and raised in Miami Beach, found my place for the moment in Fort Lauderdale for good community and good vibes because vibes don't lie.
Awesome. And I'm excited that it sounds like you're going to be sharing my celebration of my birth with me in about a month. So I'm stoked about that.
Me
I'm
too.
glad to have your energy there. And I was telling someone recently that I think it's going to be worlds colliding in such a good way because a lot of these people will be there. I think the roster's up to about 10. And it includes my brother, and my dad's going to come down because he lives about an hour away, just to like
Amazing.
say hello to people who he's never met, and then friends from a variety of different worlds. So it's really excited about that weekend.
Amazing. Amazing. Honored.
And yeah, just for whoever ends up listening to this, I'll just say I'm Dr. Michael Donovan. You and I connected recently through a mastermind group and did a backpacking trip together. And there's a lot of you and me and you. And I think, just our approach to life is very similar, albeit that our backgrounds are very different. And I think that's the magic, is that it's sort of this yin and yang, and even in the even in the our appearance, I'm in I'm in Denver, and you're in Florida. I'm clean cut, and and you never are, and I love that. That's the magic.
Absolutely.
That's the magic. Um, and I have this. I think my background's a little blurry, but I have this thing behind me. This one with the kind of
Been
person's,
looking at it. Please,
and
please,
it
please read
stands,
it to me because I
and
can't
it
read
says,
it from here.
so I saw this on a greeting card back in 2019. I was walking through a store and I saw this, and a girl I was dating at the time. I took a picture of it and I sent it to her, and then she actually painted this and gave it to me for Christmas in 2019. And there was no image, but she thought this image fitted, and so it's someone with a starry sky sitting in the grass, kind of meditating. And I lost my mom in 2015, and I think this is one of the reasons it spoke to me. But it says, "When I am gone, look for me in every star, every moon, every brand new day. I am not gone. I'm everywhere with you, everywhere the light gets in."
Oh man, that gives me goosebumps, man. Oh, my your ears. Yeah, yeah. What a beautiful reminder. Thank you for sharing that and part of your way to just shift the perspective of how you see it, right? Because it starts off as saying, I lost my mother, but really you lost your mother's body, right? You just lost her in a form, right? But we know because of physics and energy and matter and stuff, energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It just changes form, right? So, and that's part of the illusion, the magic of it all, right? Like you said, you're clean cut. I'm obviously not. I could be hiding little animals in here, right? And you're in Denver, I'm in Florida, right? And it's just the images can show two different sides, but it's like 6 and 9, right? Which one is it, right? Just depends on how you're looking at it. So yeah, perspective and using that to our advantage really helps us to enjoy this experience of life and the journey and not just, ooh, what's that endpoint? What's that destination? So without going too
Yeah.
far
No,
into it,
I
but
think it's an interesting thing. I just want to riff one for a minute because I think it goes beyond this existential, energetic thing, and it I think translates into this openness to receiving what is around you and what is, and not in this like esoteric way. But I was just talking to Heather this morning, and she has a friend who lives in Florida, coincidentally, and is on the opposite pole politically. And she showed me a message she sent her recently that was basically breaking up with her as a friend because there wasn't space in their interaction for connection because they were so deeply rooted on polarized sides. And it's interesting. She actually, Heather said, what is it? Not because I was talking to you today, but she's like, what? Because I think her friend is there. She's like, what is it like in Florida? And I said, well, one of my reflections living so long in the DC area, it, you spend a majority of your time in conversation with people you don't agree with. You're surrounded by people who you don't agree with. You have to have those nuanced conversations. You have to have an understanding. You have to, it's a function, or you're just going to be miserable all the time because you're surrounded by the opposite of an echo chamber. Essentially, like you're immersed in these conversations. And then here in Denver, Colorado has some political diversity, but Denver not so much. And if you're on the if you identify as a Democrat, you vote Democrat, then you're in good company. And socially and politically and economically in many ways I am. And so that's great. But what's lacking here is that ability to hold confidently, comfortably that dialogue with those you don't agree with. Right. And that's where it transposes and translates well beyond politics. It's about anything, right? And so if you have someone who, I know several people now who are getting more into psychedelics and the medicinal journeys and taking, ayahuasca and if you number one are not really into that element, then you might completely dismiss that as just, crazy. But then there's the experience they have and they come back with enlightenment or, a broader vision and a broader scope and whatnot. It's fascinating, whether it's their reality or it is the reality and it's our universe or that's their universe and it's just in their mind or it is, you know, and I think we're just my point, I think, in all this is that we're missing a lot if we're unable, if we are unable, I'm going to start. We are missing a lot if we are unable to have those conversations. If we're unable to hold that space for things we disagree with, things we don't know, admitting we don't know.
Mhm.
So I,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. I hear you, man. I am into the whole uh, ayahuasca side, right? And psychedelics. It's just for its mind opening capacities, right? But what you're saying is very important, right? Because at the end of the day, doesn't matter what I believe or what you believe, it's all subjective. And what, I don't know how far we want to go down this rabbit hole, but essentially what I believe is that God created us to have an experience, right? I believe in sacred geometry a lot, right? So it says it all starts with a point, right? And it is everything, right? And it's like, well, that's God, right? God is everything, right? And but he he doesn't know himself because he just is. So what does he do? He creates like an atom. And all of a sudden now he can see himself, right? Now he can relate, right? That's what we are. We're here to relate. It's all relative, right? And then he says, "Ooh, I want to know myself more." And then he begins to draw out the seed of life and then becomes the flower and continues expanding, expanding, expanding. The same way every cell, every being, every plant, every baby, every molecule always starts off in the same way, right? So we all go through this same transformation, and it's in the book, which is funny enough, very not very religious, but the book is Conversations with God, and it basically says that as long as we continue to put ourselves in these separate groups, right? Like, ooh, I'm white, you're black. Well, no, I have long hair, you have short hair. No, I'm Democratic. I'm I'm Republican. It's just we're just easier to be controlled, and we're easier to continue to fight between ourselves instead of just looking at each other and saying, we all have blood, right? Our bodies operate the same way. We got 24 hours in a day. We all want to, in some way, shape, or form, fulfill our Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and we're all at different levels of it. But essentially, at the basic bit of it, right? Buddhism will say, from Buddhist perspective, which is the one that I lean to the most, that ideology is that be as happy as you can without inhibiting somebody else's happiness. That's like one. And then two would be if you can show compassion and help somebody else ease their suffering, then that's a amazing bonus, right? Those would be the two kind of big, I don't know, I guess key points I would say. It's just that, right? It's just be as happy as you can. And if somebody believes something different than you, be like, sure, like good for you. If it's what makes you happy, it calls you, it lights you up, good for you. I'm not going to interrupt that happiness for you, right? Why should I? Right? Why should I impose my will or thought or belief on you? If it fires you up, it excites you, ooh, right? Like the only way we know what is for us is by knowing what isn't for us. And it doesn't have to be good or bad. It's just what's in your best interest or what's not in your best interest. So, but yeah, I can continue these riffs. So I'll look to snap it at the end.
I think or I don't know if it's, the prehistoric brain or modern brain, but our brains now, it seems, want to put things in boxes, right? And as soon as we say, there's these, they're not trigger words, but they trigger a thought immediately, right? Like Republican or, activist or, libertarian or Buddhist or
Yeah.
Muslim or, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and I mean, to extrapolate that, I mean, we can, that was political and religious, but, and realizing often within there is more diversity than between. Within the denominations of Christianity, right? There is actually more diversity between different denominations than there might be between one denomination, the practitioners of one, and Buddhism, or and Quakerism, right? Or Catholicism or Islam. But we don't look for the commonalities. We look for the differences for some reason often, I think.
Yeah. I believe that's the prehistoric brain, right? Like well, no, I'm actually going back. The prehistoric brain is the one that wants to put things in boxes. It essentially wants to say, do I fear this or is this benefit me? Right? That's usually what it is at the simplest point. I
Is
think
this
it's
a
our
threat?
exactly.
Is
Is
this
this a threat? Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And essentially, okay, the idea also comes with conversation with God, which is an amazing, but it says every decision we make, it really boils down to two decisions, right? It's either based out of fear, right? We don't like something, we want to run away from it. We're like, I don't want this in my life, or it's based out of love, right? I want this, give me more, you attract towards it, right? So, and we fear what we don't understand, right? So when somebody says something, right, and you were saying some words there, and then some of them, like my blood started flowing a bit. I was like, whoa. I was like, it just gets me a little tense, and I'm like it feels like almost like we're going into a battle, right? Because it's like, why, right? Like I love this idea when it's like two wings of the same bird, right? It's like we're forgetting that this is not a me against you. It's we're all in this together. We all want to just do our best to be a good person, provide for our families, be a good example in our community. And yes, we have different ways of doing it, but does it have to be like I'm this, you're wearing the wrong color, you know? And it's like, why? Why does it have to go to this? So yeah, the wild, wild world out there. And I think a lot of these conversations that we'll have, I hope will just inspire people just to break these preconceived notions and give them a reason to say, if you look for it, right? It's like the red Jeep theory. You will find more things in common with the person in front of you than not. But you have to look for it. That's the thing is it's what you choose to look upon, you will find. If you want to find commonalities, you want to find something of gratitude, right? If you say when you start your day, I want to look for three things to be grateful for, or I want to say three nice things to random people that I meet. I mean, your whole day is just filled with positivity because you're looking to just give it back. But if you're looking, you wake up and you wake up in a state of fear and you're just like, what's the threat? What's going to happen to me today? Is someone going to cut me off? Is somebody going to skip me in line? Is somebody going to try and take my money? I mean, you're looking for it. You're spending all this attention, right? Joe Dispenza says, right, where attention goes, energy flows,
Hmm.
right? So what you spend your mental energy on will manifest, and that's all we are, right? I am just a magical reflection of you, right? You know, what you see in me is what you see in yourself. In the same way, what I see in you, and I'm like this handsome three-man Michael Jared Donovan, well composed, and I'm just like, wow, look at this version of me. I was like, I didn't know I could do it so well. Look at you, you know. So it's so much more fun when you're looking for the commonalities, right? And then you're like, man, how great. We could be such different colors, versions, languages, but if we just look to connect, right? Like what's one thing that I could just be like, "Ooh, I think that that's really cool." All of a sudden, there's a connection, right? And we all crave for it. So, but yeah, you'll have to do your best containing some of this. I
My
start to expand, expand, expand.
my mind works in analogies, and I thought of in this age of the uh, early stage of AI. Many people know of the learning language model, and that's kind of it, right? When we think of AI, and it's ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or whatever, and that I think that's a the output is only as good as the prompt, and just as you're saying, how do you prompt yourself in the morning? Your output for the day is going to be based on your morning prompt that you put in your brain.
Wow. Beautiful.
And
Beautifully, beautifully.
I actually I said to Heather, because she told me her situation with her friend that she's breaking up with, and I didn't want to make it about me, and I didn't want to make it about her. I wanted to reflect on the situation, right? And so I actually prompted ChatGPT to help me articulately say what I wanted to say to Heather without triggering her and without making it about me. And I just pulled up the response, and what it said is in I actually miss that dialogue, that conversation around things where people are not choosing sides as much, that I had more often in DC than I've been able to have here in Denver. And it said, It's not politics you're craving, it's psychological safety for real conversation. You want nuance instead of binaries, curiosity instead of defensiveness. Tell me more instead of let's not go there. And I love this one. Embodied humanity instead of team jerseys. And people who can hold complexity without shutting down. These are rare everywhere, but DC spoils you because you grew up in a culture pocket where it was normal. And I love that. I love the team jerseys, right? Like, what team are you on today?
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, exactly. Are you
And is
team
your team
humanity?
winning? How's the season going? Is your team winning or are they
Yeah,
losing?
no, yeah, yeah, yeah. Or we're all wearing the same jersey, but we're all players in the same team, and we got different positions, and some may be going better than others. But if we just all say what I do, the collective wins, that's a pretty beautiful jersey to wear, right?
Well, and I think what we forget in conversation, and really, I mean, over months with friends and with colleagues and with opponents and everything, is that no team wins every game, and no country wins every battle, right? And it's playing the long game, and pick your battles, right? Is a very common
Right.
phrase, but we engage with everyone from with the same intensity and the same, and it's either right or wrong. It's this dichotomy as with no nuance, no gray area, and again, we snap to that place so quickly. Uh, well, why don't we make it a little later and have a little fun if you're up for it. Is there anything else on this you wanna
Well, yeah, I was just gonna say, well, first of all, very beautifully put with the ChatGPT, right? I think that's something that I've learned, and I think people can relate to is that the better you prompt the GPT, the better your question, the better the prompt, the better the answer, right? The better the result. And I've been saying that before I've been integrating into AI, right? The quality of your life is determined by the quality of your question, right? The questions you ask. And then on a personal note, I would just say that I was the person that I needed right or wrong, right? And it was luckily my wife, Lima, she's from Europe, right? And I was, imagine, born and raised in Miami. So very, everybody has their own image of what Miami is, but normally it's pretty collectively in the same direction. So whenever there would be something that I believed that I held true, she would come from a place of a dialogue and a conversation and kind of challenge it and say, well, where did you get that information? How did you base that, decision? And sometimes I wouldn't have the source. And all of a sudden I felt myself losing a battle, and I would immediately go into a debate and go and try and prove it. And from my emotional side, I would use my Hispanic machismo and like, no, well, it's this way because I saw this and then this. And it's like, yeah, but you saw that. That's a subjective thing. Where's the data? If you're going to look to prove it, right? Like, give me something solid, something concrete. And man, I'll just put it like this. I really didn't like losing. I was wearing a jersey and I was always wearing the me jersey. I'm like, I'm right. What I learned is top, and she humbled me. She humbled me a lot because she's like, look, we're just having a conversation. It doesn't have to be a debate, right? This is my understanding of it. This is your understanding of it, right? She comes from living in London for 10 years, right? So it's British English, right? Water, right? I say water. And there would be some words that I have to correct her on. And she's like, what? She's like, oh my gosh, I've been saying it wrong this whole time. And then she would go look it up and be like, no, actually, she's been saying it right. Is it color or is it color? Like, is it spelled O-R? Is it O-U-R? They're both correct, right? And you're just like, man, so again, traveling experience, getting out of your bubble, the more you can be in different experiences of different cultures, different peoples, it just gives you more appreciation, more vision, more perspective. And then you stop being so single-minded, right? Like our life is the most important thing in the world. And then you just, right? It's all about zooming in and then zooming out, right? And then you zoom out and you realize like our whole life is happening like in a hair span of the whole microcosm of everything. And it's like, gosh, all of our problems. And then you just zoom out and it's like Earth is like this little dot. And you're like, everything you know, everything you're scared about, angry about, happy about is all happening in this little thing. And you just, wow. So it's just, it's that. I think it's going from my original point about perspective being a game changer is the ability to zoom in and then zoom out, right? You need to know when you need to be zoomed in and you're like, ooh, this is it. This is what we got to solve or figure out. But then sometimes you just got to zoom out a bit and just be like, whoa, well, look, if I look at the bigger picture here, actually, we both want to help humanity, right? But maybe you think that this is your subjective experience that works and this is mine, right? Well, how can we come together and foster and say, well, this is both our end goal, right? What is in our best interest now? Because a lot of the decisions that we've made and that information is based on off of old information, right? And a lot of that is based off of old conditions, based off of our parents or our grandparents. And a lot of it we accepted without even questioning it. So we don't even realize how much of that we're still doing actions based off of an operating system that's been, was created like 20 years ago. When you get on an airplane now, you realize you're like, people haven't been smoking on airplanes for like 25, 30 years. Why do they still have a no smoking sign? Why are there still ashtrays on the outside of the bathroom? You're like, what? Because the plane was designed 30 years ago. But by the time it got built and integrated, it was a lot longer. So yeah, without jumping too far off into the Netherland, but yeah, that's what I have to add.
Yeah, no, and I'm constantly taking notes during these kinds of conversations because things come up and I want to be able to fully be present. But the two questions that I wrote down while you were talking there at the end are, what are my assumptions and how can we ask better questions? And I think one of the things I say a lot as a coach, I think good coaches provide great information. I think great coaches through questions, prompt their clients to think differently. And I think exceptional coaches prompt clients to ask questions that the coach themselves can't even ask them because their clients know themselves better than the coach or consultant or therapist or
Hmm.
doctor or whatever ever will. And I think, you know, if you're just asking yourself in general questions that you can easily answer all the time, and I don't know how we, upgrade our operating system, to ask ourselves better questions because but I do think it comes in conversation. And I think that's the downside to tie this a nice little bow, unintentionally coming full circle, is it doesn't happen in a monoculture. It doesn't happen in an echo chamber. It can't. It's impossible when you're surrounded by those who are like, you just can't advance
Hmm.
beyond that fully because you never have that input that makes you feel right. You're just operating at a logical level. Well, I ask this question, I answer it right. But I mean, as you said earlier, I was just saying words that made you feel. I mean, whether it's in a positive way, reading this verse, or whether it's other things that just have and then when you feel in a different way, you think in a different way. And I think that's the power, that's the greatest power of having diversity of inputs, that they spark these diversity of outputs that it's just impossible to have otherwise.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's that ability to be okay with somebody having a different opinion than you, and just looking at it with that curiosity to say, how did they come up with that answer? right? Like what was the thought logic? What was that process? And if you look at it from that curiosity standpoint, right? I mean, I'll make a funny one. My wife and I, we have a challenge when we look at certain colors, right? I will describe it as a blue, and she'll be like, that's a green. And I'm like, what? And it's just so luckily we've gotten to the point she's really helped me a whole lot. And in my therapy as well, my therapist challenged me one time. She's like, what's the worst that happens if you're wrong? She's like, what's so bad about being wrong? How, how do I answer that question, man? It just took me a moment and just said, wow, I get so fired up about being wrong and looking to kind of recover myself when she asked me, it just totally disarmed me. What's so wrong with being wrong? Like, and it really just comes back to the ego, right? Oh my gosh, I have a wrong piece of information. I've been led wrong. And oh, I believed for a certain amount of time that this was right. And somebody just shattered that belief, right? I mean, it just, so being curious in a conversation and not being tied to the outcome, right? Ooh, no, I need to walk away knowing that I was wearing the right jersey. Like, right? I went out onto the battlefield wearing the right uniform and it was for the winning team. It just go into the conversation with that curiosity and that really changes how you will come out of it, right? How you prompt, how you perspective. So yeah, you said it a lot more
Well, I think
organized.
there's two things there, and then we'll wrap this up and move on. But I have a good friend who grew up in Germany, or he's German but grew up in Spain, and he says, I don't know that that's necessary. That's actually necessary, relevant information, but he says, as I think is more cultural there, what he means is I believe or I think, but he says you shouldn't. For example, coming from Europe, this is why it's relevant. I forgot why it was relevant. The tipping for us, the service charge we give of tipping gratuity is not standard across Europe, but it's common practice here in the States for everything. Right.
Let's not even go into that part.
And some people, I think one of the areas where there is kind of a little bit, I mean, most people go to dinner, okay, 15 to 20% kind of thing, a little more, a little less, whatever, based on, but probably a minimum of like 15% for industrial service is really, I mean, maybe it's just, and then you have people who have worked in the service industry and they're like minimum of 18 to 20%, like I've
Yeah,
been there. But he says, okay, the barista who pours me a cup of coffee, you shouldn't tip a barista for just pouring you a cup of coffee. What he means is, I wouldn't, I choose not to. But he phrases it, you shouldn't. And I use this as such a mild example. But the same woman who painted me this picture worked in the service industry, worked in a coffee shop, and I mean, it was a fight at the dinner table many, many years ago because not because of the content, but because of the delivery, right? Don't tell me what to do based on your values. And we're talking about tipping a barista, right?
yeah, but
This
yeah,
is this is one hair higher in importance than is this aqua color green or blue, right?
yeah, yeah. Wow, wow, yeah,
And so, I think that I just highlight that because there's that's the other thing is can we, I said how, I mean, we're talking about communication now, right? And before we were talking about our thoughts. And so my two questions, what are my assumptions? That's sort of my thoughts. And then how can we ask better questions is a communication piece. And I think both of those, right, or the thoughts we have, the information we have, and then how we actually have that dialogue is really important because if you approach it like my friend does, right? And says it's right out of the gate. There's very little middle ground. There's really not a
Yeah,
lot
yeah,
of
yeah.
room for communication and productive conversation around that, because you've already put someone back on their heels, and they're going to dig you even more and say, that is blue. I'm not going to believe that this is green, right? I cannot stand for green on this, and it's not about right or wrong, right? It's not at all about right or wrong.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just about your perspective, and the funny thing would be if you were actually looking at something, not shoulder to shoulder looking, and then you went to where she was looking at and you were like, you know what? What's your wife's name? Lee.
Lima. Yeah.
You go to where she's standing and you say, in this light, you're right. It is blue. It's not green.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. That's why it's the 6 or 9, right? It just depends on where you're looking at it. What are you choosing to look at? How you see it. Yeah. And I will say on the barista example, I think it was a phenomenal example, right? Because yeah, here in the US, we're like religiously, we love it, right? Now you get asked for tipping everywhere. It's wild. As a coach, right? We really amazing soundboards, right? Because it's so easy to just tell somebody exactly what to do, right? But there's so much more value and there's a lot better chance of long-term memory storage when they come up with that answer themselves. So instead of the guy saying, your friend, right, saying you shouldn't tip, is he could have come at it with a question and said, well, why do you feel you need to tip the barista? And then they say, oh, well, because it's normal to tip, right, in the US because the wages are low. So we overcompensate with the gratuity to be able to say, oh, well, here in Europe, the wages are not low. They're actually, I mean, they're not high, but they're standard. The barista gets a standard wage. And you say, okay, now you can come up with that answer yourself and say, oh, based on the inputs have changed in Europe. So now there's a different output, right? So it's the same idea that whatever piece of information you have, it's based on a different input, right? Every person filters it and re-emerges it based off of their experience, what they've been through. So, and then you said something that tipped a point for me is it's all in the delivery, right? So instead of telling you what to do, which I don't know how many people are fans of that, but the delivery is the only part of the conversation that we have control over. We cannot be responsible for how that information will be received. Our job is in that 85% is just and how we deliver and present that information. Is it in a loving way? Is it full of details? Is it full of the whole package? You're giving them the whole information so that they can make a well-informed decision and respond to it clearly, right? So we as society, as humanity, can be, I believe, would benefit more in focusing more on how we deliver the message instead of trying to frame it in the way that we want the message to be received.
Is that being less tied to the outcome?
Yes.
Here's an example. I realized recently from someone you'll meet next month that as a coach, someone who people seek out my advice. It's disappointing, it's frustrating when someone doesn't follow my advice. As a partner, it's annoying, it's frustrating when my fiance asks me for my input and then doesn't follow it. And so my friend reflected to me. So it just we had a couple conversations around this recently, and he said, "How could you reframe that or rephrase that?" And he said, "Could you?" Was something we were talking about. He said, "Could you rephrase that as they didn't listen to me?" And that's ultimately what gets me in this negative space is someone sought me out in some way to give them input, then they Michael, they didn't listen to me. Why did they not listen to me? And why did you even come to me if you're not going to listen? Right. And he had a beautiful point that often gets overlooked that I kind of alluded to before. Sometimes you don't know what you want or what you don't want until you're presented with options that you would not have come to otherwise. And so they didn't ignore my input. The input I gave was extremely valuable for them to know that was not the direction they wanted to go.
Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Yeah. Because then how do you know? Un How do you know what you want or don't want until you can see both sides of it? So yeah, that's amazing, right? It wasn't about you, right? And I hear you saying it and I'm like, I'm reliving it in my head. How many times have I been through the same thing, right? Like, why do you ask me if you're not going to do anything about it, right? But reframing it, like you said, very beautiful, very beautifully put. Yeah, you have an amazing way with words, and that's why I love this idea of just us having these conversations. I believe there's a lot of value here that people can just get out of their moment and just help open up a bit, have a conversation, how to have a dialogue, how to be open to receive information, to see it differently and in a more beneficial way. So yeah, really, really awesome.
Yeah. All
I
right,
believe
Mike.
we'll have a lot of these because I don't
Yes.
even think we even made it to the cards.
Just the beginning. Well, do you have a few more minutes? Do you have a
Yeah,
little
I
bit
do. I
of
do.
time?
Yeah,
Okay.
please, please.
All right. So I'm gonna set a stopwatch so it doesn't cut us off in the minute, but I'm gonna kind of keep time. And I have the cards here. We're gonna start with icebreakers, and if you don't like it, we can pass. I mean, this is all for fun, like
No,
whatever.
this is for fun. I
But
love it. I'm all for it.
I put where did I? Oh, so this was the icebreaker stack, and I took some out. So I have a small number here. It's like I'm gonna about to do a magic trick here. So I'm gonna lay four in front of me from a selected group because some of them were like, well, that one's actually not bake or cook. Like that's not very interesting. That's not a good icebreaker. So I have 1 through 4 here. One is to my left and 4 is to my right. Pick a number 1 to 4, and we'll start with that one.
Three.
Do you believe in ghosts? Why or why not?
Yes. I mean, ghost is a funny way to put it, but yes. I because energy just changes form, right? So yeah, I you feel something, you hear something in the house. I mean, is it just the old house that's creaking? Is it? Or are there many souls, many lives just beyond the visible spectrum of light that we see that are just happening around us as well? What
Yeah.
about you?
Yeah, I think in a literal and a figurative way, this kind of bridges back to what we were talking about before. But I think, yes, to what you said. And if we look inside, we see a lot of other people, our parents, our siblings, our friends within us. And I think that gives hope in some ways. It also really makes it important who you spend time around, who influences you, right? Because you are, as you said before, a reflection of those you interact with, and so it's really important to defend, your environment, but then also just really appreciate and acknowledge those who are within you, and that even strangers, right? There's a commonality that there's there between even strangers, that there is some of you and me and in others who, again, we may on 3/4 of things disagree with, but that that energy overlaps in a beautiful humanity energetic Venn diagram. So yes, I believe in ghosts.
I love how you put it, and I'm just saying it out loud because I think it's worth mentioning the embodied humanity over the team jerseys. I love that. Love that.
Yeah. All right, pick another number and I'll go first this time.
Okay, let's do two.
This is a very practical one. What clubs or extracurriculars were you involved in during high school? I was involved in almost everything. Scouts, band for a bit, soccer, lacrosse, basketball, track, club soccer, National Honor Society, soccer referee. Yeah. Yeah, I always like to be very, very involved and yeah, I still do. So that's less so now. More involved with my family and my friends than the community, unfortunately, right now. But yeah,
No, I wouldn't say unfortunately. I would say, your inner circle is important, right? You gotta feed that and feel that so that you can then go back out and be the good examples, right? So,
that's right.
um, yeah, there's a
Quality over
lot.
quantity.
Yes, yes, 1000%. I was just gonna say that, right? High school is like the testing phase. I think being an adult, it's more about saying no to things, being more diligent in saying no. Watching Yes Man, I took that too literal and I started saying yes to everything, which was good. But yeah, coming back, you got to say no to more things. All right. The
I like to
question,
say, but before you answer
yeah.
that, because I think you'll remember that. I just wanted that I like to say that I've read, and this will come up in future conversations. I'm sure there's a lot of books I've been reading recently, and posts I've been seeing on internal and external group chats and things that people finding their purpose, and we've talked about this a bit, and their identity, and whether you make a little amount of money or you make a lot of amount of money, or you have a little amount of money, or it's the same question. I think at some point in your life you just reach it, depending on what your career trajectory is or your family trajectory. And I have a soon to be 3-year-old son, and many people my age have kids in college now. So just different stages of that part of the life. But I think, you said high school is your time of exploring. I think, you know, that extends into your 20s for many people, kind of figuring out what you like, what you're good at, these kinds of things. And then your 30s hopefully is building on that. Once you've identified those things, you build on that. And hopefully those things are in align with your identity, who you are, not what you do, is your identity defined in that way. And then 40s is, if you haven't, well, it's finding that, like, is this thing that made me quote unquote successful, that brought me some wealth or some direction or some meaning or whatever, like, is that really what I am here for? And then, and for some, it happens earlier, it happens sooner, and for others, it happens much later, or maybe never. But I have some books that I've been reading recently that are like Let Your Life Speak, and the great work of your life, and these kinds of things that are all around this thing, whether, in every tradition we have something, there's a word for it, and it's like ikigai, or it's dharma, or it's your calling or your vocation, or, every tradition around the world has some word in their culture for this. And I think, the the Alaskans, who have a dozen words for snow or whatever, may have more. Well, or the Eskimos, right, may have multiple words for this, or maybe they just have multiple words for snow. But there's many, many words for this. But I think it all comes back to a central theme that is really, really important. And I do think it comes initially from trying lots of things. And to tie back to before, being surrounded by people who have very differing opinions, so you can kind of stress test your identity and try things on, and know that, you don't have to, it's like going to a clothing store and trying on suits. Like, not all of them are going to fit, right? And you're just trying to find that one that fits. You only need one as we walk through this life, right? But you don't have to buy the whole store. You just have to try on enough that you identify the one that feels right.
Yeah. 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 Uh, yeah. Very, very, very poignant points because, yeah, in high school, yeah, is the initial experimenting phase, right? And then I think as you get into your 30s, most people have found one of those things and continued to expand on it and grow on that and building wealth and stuff. And then somewhere, I think for our generation, somewhere between the 30s and 40s, you reach a point and you're realizing, is this path that I've been expanding on based on somebody else's idea of happiness? Or is it actually aligned with mine? Is this actually part of my purpose and identity and aligned with my values? And do I continue it, or like, do I continue and double down? Which I would say for most people, it isn't, right? I would say we have more influence based on our society and culture based off of what they think is the best way from our parents, from our friends, from all of that. And usually we're racing somebody else's race, right? We're racing somebody else's idea of what is success. And then somewhere in there, you just it's I don't know, I would say it's like the gears in the car, they're just not fully lined up, right? The teeth are not fully straight, right? Like here it looks straight, but what if it's just off just a little bit? And those teeth are wearing slowly but surely, and slowly you're gonna have start slipping, right? And then that's where we start having these days you wake up, you're like I'm making the money and then this is working, right? Like all the pieces are moving, but it doesn't feel like it's engaged, right? It's not like the gears are just hitting and cranking. So as a purpose coach, I that's my goal is just to help spark those questions to help find that, right? Because this is not my initial career, right? You'll hear it now in my high school, right? Clubs, organizations. So Academy of Hospitality and Tourism. I was doing Civil Air Patrol, the Air Force Auxiliary. I did tennis. I did some football before I got injured. Yeah, did speaking. So you said like the Honor Society, National Honor Society. There were some speaking engagements there. I did marching band as well. I love that. That was a lot of fun. Just initial experimentations. Yeah, that was most of it. I'm sure there's some other ones in there, but I was involved as a class treasurer, so some sort of like, yeah, 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 some sort of importance in the class structure and having trying to make things better for the high school organization.
Nice. I flipped the cards over and now I can see them, and I'm just gonna rip on
Go for
one.
it.
You like music, yeah?
Absolutely.
What's your favorite band or musical artist?
Whoa, that's at this exact moment in time because it goes changing. Hans Zimmer is someone that I massively, massively was somebody favorite artist. I don't know. It's favorite artist right now. It's like what am I listening to most right now? Somewhere between Hans Zimmer, Chemical Brothers, Khruangbin. Man, that's such a loaded question for me to ask. For me, I just can't put it into one. It's like there's always like a group and they're kind of floating around. Right now, who's listening most in my thing is Roan. It's almost like this electrical kind of universal energetic music, I would almost say. It's really been digging that lately for sure. I hope you have a better answer and maybe a little bit more clear because I'm like splayed all over the place.
Well, I'm also starting with recent listening and live listening, and this has been being in Denver here, close to the Red Rocks Amphitheater. I've seen some very, very great shows, and when I was visiting DC, so it saw Sting earlier this year. Nathaniel Rateliff and the Night Sweats played with the Lumineers, who are touring separately but joined together on a tour because they're both sort of claimed to be from Denver, and so they came together here in Denver. We saw them at the Broncos Stadium. I saw Metallica there. We saw Coldplay there. But I think the one I just come back to, I wouldn't say they're my favorite band, but they're really having a great ride this year. And it's the Red Clay Strays. They were named, I think, as the CMT like Artist of the Year. They have like 9 million followers on or listens on Spotify. And I saw them at Red Rocks. They sold out two shows. And when I was doing an adventure race earlier this year in April with a new friend who I've seen a couple times since then, he turned me on to them, and we were floating down the river for about 5 hours together. And he told me about them the day before, and so I downloaded the Right Place to Raise Radio and had it on my Bluetooth speaker, and so we listened together. And so it's very sentimental to me that listening to them. And one of the top songs, I won't belabor this, but one of the top songs they have is called "Wondering Why." I pulled up the lyrics in it, and it's kind of this love song that says, "She keeps on loving me, loves me the way I am. She's not just along for the ride. She's my biggest fan. Lord, it's a little old piece of heaven when we lay down at night. She keeps loving me, and I keep on wondering why." And it's they're more like I'd say like a Lyle Lovett in a way than a Morgan Wallen or whatever. Like it's more of that sort of like Texan country. I think it comes from like Oklahoma, Alabama kind of thing. So
Mhm.
I'm really digging them lately.
Awesome.
All right, let's do a couple more, and then we'll wrap up for today. What's one useless skill you have?
That's a challenging one to ask a Virgo and recovering perfectionist that he has an actual useless skill. What is a useless skill?
What would your wife say?
I would love to ask her. Can I? Can I go pop out and just give her a call? Say, excuse me. What would she say is a useless skill? I don't know. I guess we'll take it from a funny standpoint. I'm sure she has a better answer. I would say a useless skill. I'm thinking of what she would say is leaving hair in the bathtub. It's unfortunately it's a skill of mine, but sometimes, right? So I've gotten better about washing, all the hair out of the tub after, but I don't know. I didn't realize this was a thing. The hair would be coming off the chest and stuff, but I'm drying off. So yeah, that's a useless skill. But I'll get back to the better answer. But please give me something. Hopefully you had
I don't
time
know.
to
This
prepare.
is a tough. I mean, this is like asking people who focus on their strengths so much, in an interview, what is your greatest weakness or something, right?
Yeah,
And it's
yeah.
always something that can be turned around into a strength. But I think I'm gonna take an audible
Detour.
on it, and instead just say something that I don't know that I think there's a skill element to it, but I've always been able to live a very balanced life, balancing work and play and family and career and these kinds of things. And that is something that many people envy and aspire to. Even my father told me a decade ago that he always looked to me as a role model for living a balanced life. So I definitely would not say it's useless, but it's on my mind because going into the new year, I know that it's like having something on your goals for the quarter, for the year, that you're doing anyway. Like if you go to the gym every day, you can't list that as a goal that you're going to do it because you're already doing it, right? And so I think after 45 years, probably wasn't doing this when I was 2. So let's say, I don't know, since I was 10, 35 years, I have lived a very balanced life. And, and probably at 10 I was finishing my homework, and I was playing outside, and I was playing the piano or the cello or whatever. Um, so I think I can take that for granted that I will continue, or I will at least very much notice if that's out of balance. And so I'm going to focus on in the first quarter of the new year on, well, actually, I'm going to focus on play even more, and then see if I fully really like make that my focus, what comes up and what connections develop around that, and who
Mhm.
else is also prioritizing that. And so instead of trying to bring people together to join me and do things with me, I'm going to do the things I want to do and find the people that are also doing those things,
Yes.
and they're my people, right? And so I used to do that all the time, and I think over time I really wanted to have a crew that was doing things with me and individuals who would, and so Friday night I went to hear a podcaster, without I invited people, no one could go. Happy to go by myself, and I really enjoyed it. Um, that's
Amazing.
that's my focus. I don't know that it's definitely not useless, but it is a different way of thinking because we usually think, I mean, if I said, what's a very useful skill you have, could probably think of lots of them right off the top of your head.
Hmm.
But when we
Hmm.
flip the script, it's a lot more difficult. All right, two more cards. Are you good for two
Yeah,
more?
yeah,
All right.
yeah. Let's look.
Um,
Wait. I think of one useless skill did come up to me.
okay.
Depending on who it is, they'll say if it's useless or not. Giving unsolicited advice. Some people would say it's a useless skill. I sometimes, yeah. So I'll just leave it there. We could jump to the next one. We don't have to dig in too deep into that one. But yeah, something about being a coach. I've been living this way for a very long time, and I'm always looking to give the gold nuggets to help people. But there's also part of it is that you have to want to seek it, right? If you just give it to somebody where they didn't ask for it, unfortunately, I think it goes on deaf ears, right? Most of the time. So just because it's gold, right? If they're not looking for gold, they won't see the gold in it, right? So if they are looking for it, they do ask, ooh, then I give them that. Then they're like, oh my gosh, look what I got you, right? So it's again that perspective, right? That prompting, how you prompt your day. So just because I can be spitting out the best responses ChatGPT's ever given, if somebody's not at the computer, it doesn't matter what I'm saying because nobody's there to receive it. So yeah, just a fun one that came up to my head.
Well, it reminds me of something I was thinking earlier that when we were talking about giving advice, and I think this is something that could be really helpful. I'm going to use going forward, and so I'll mention it for anyone who listens this far into our conversation. That it prefacing. Let's say your wife wants to buy a new car, and she asks you what kind of car you think she should get, and you say, here in Colorado right now, there's until the end of the year, there's still a tax credit for almost $4,000 towards electric vehicles. And so someone might say, you should, if that was in Florida, oh, you should capitalize on that tax credit and you should get an EV. And then she goes out and she buys a car and she brings it home and it's not an EV. And you left with the understanding that I told her that I recommend an EV. Right? And you're like, "What the hell?" But if she had said, "Michael," does she call you Michael?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. If she said, "Michael, I am going to buy a car and I am making the decision myself, but I'm curious what input you have. I'd like to consider your input, but this is my decision." That I've never thought about that before. In asking or giving advice, right? And asking, right? I mean, if she doesn't say that, right? Because that takes a rapport that, basically a format, right? That you've established sort of to have that. But if she said, I'm thinking of buying a new car, and you said, would you like is this a joint decision or is this your decision? Not that it changes your input, right? But that communication again around like asking better questions. It's like you might assume she's making it, she's considering what you want equally, but that's not the case.
So I want to riff on this because this is really good, right? I would even go back further and just say the question for her to say, what was the original question? What car would you buy? Or how did you phrase that original question? Was it what car are you gonna buy? I want to buy a car.
What do you think? I mean, the way I think it would colloquially be asked is, I looking to buy a new car. What car should I get?
Okay, there you go. Yeah. So what car should I get
Because
is
that's the internal question they're asking, right? That's the internal question. What
yeah,
car should I get? And so they
yeah.
verbalize that
Yeah.
with
Perfect.
no context.
Yeah. So what car and it's unspoken but normally understood. What car do you believe I should buy? Right? So and I think the problem really comes back to the responders, right? We have to be willing to give that information and be separate from the end result, right? What ends up happening with that information if we give it, right? And I think this is a really great lesson on giving itself. When you give it, you give with no expectation. You just give the information. I believe you should buy an EV because there's a tax credit for 4,000. Okay. The problem is when we give that information, assuming that they will take it and act on it. And then when they don't, then we get mad at them or get bothered and be like, well, what happened? I told you this. Why didn't you do? Instead of just maybe they didn't buy the EV and then you just say, oh, how did you come to that decision? Right? You can still get the same answer, right? Of why didn't you listen to me? But instead of it being as an attack or as an offense, why didn't you listen to me? Was my answer not enough for you? You didn't believe in me, right? Because there's some of these things that stem in there. You could just say, how did you come to decide to buy that car? Again, and these are two of my central themes. One of the guys in my mastermind, actually in my pod, Brian Ellison, give him a shout out if he listens to all of this. He said these two words to me, and I really love this central theme about it. He says, if we can all just be curious and kind, he said the world would be a magnificent place, right? If we just look at it, and those two themes really come back to 7-year-old, 8-year-old, 9-year-old you and me, right? MJD, MBD, right? Like if we just look at the world with curiosity, like, ooh, how does that work? And why do the lines on that palm tree, why are they all not straight, right? Why are some of them like this? And, and if we just be kind to each other, right? So taking back that riff off of that branch is just saying that when we give information, we have to give it without an attachment to the outcome, right? Without it saying that "Oh, just because I give it to you, I put a condition on it that you have to act upon it." No, I give you the information unconditionally. I give it to you with love. I give it to you and let you be the master of your own journey because you are, and it doesn't need to be said. I can give you an input to reflect. Maybe it'll show you it is what you want. Maybe it'll show you it's not what you want, right? And whichever it is, like you said, it could just be that important piece of information to exactly show them that it's not for them, right? And that's also a very important skill in our adult life that we've most of us, I would say, I don't like to stay in extremes, but most of us have not been conditioned to think about. So yeah. So yes, I know there's an element there about you could ask the better question, right? That we're putting a little bit more responsibility on the person that's asking it to phrase it in such a way that will not get them in trouble. But I feel like that's coming from a place of fear, right? If I have to tippy toe around the way that I ask you, and I'm like, hey, Michael, I'm considering this. I would like your input. I may or may not use it. I hope it doesn't disturb you. Would you still be willing to give me your best opinion on what you think? And it's like, that's not coming from a curious and kind place. That's like curious, but tentative, but hesitant, right? It's just, so again, we can see a lot of things eye to eye. Not everything will be, right? I think that that's a place where it's just, if you give the information, give it without condition, without expectation. And then that's it. The person asks the question, how you interpret it, you give your best response and let them be the judge of if it's in their best interest or not, and not be tied to that outcome.
And I think even responding with along the thread of curiosity, responding with a question for in appropriate situations, responding to the question with a question, right? Especially on something as broad as this sort of very pedestrian example, what kind of car should I buy? Oh, that's a great question. What kind of cars are you considering right now? And if you're considering 50 trucks, well, Hyundai EV or a Tesla is going to be very different. And but again, back to the beginning of our conversation, that then we're not polarizing ourselves on different sides of an equation, and not even knowing, right? We're meeting in the middle. Well, let's start with understanding really what you're asking, and then sometimes we do the complete opposite and like give our opinion without even answering the question at all, which is also just problematic, as giving an answer. And I mean, there's a lot of things here. Probably that's the best, I think, journey to be on is, and also frustrating for people if they really want just an answer, right? I didn't ask, this question for you to ask me questions, right? I
Hmm.
wanted your input, but you know, depending on the rapport you have.
Yeah.
But segueing off to that rapport, let's just do one more question, and it involves your wife. What's something you would have never gotten into, but did because of her?
That's a really good one. That's an amazing something. I mean, wow. That's a wait, is it my turn to answer first or is it your turn to answer first? But I mean, I can go. I can go. I don't
Go ahead.
mind. I don't mind.
I'm not sure. I've lost track, but
Yeah.
if you have something, go ahead.
So, so no, I just want to say man, and I don't know if it's just, yeah, me and my default to go kind of very deep in the outer realms, but I would almost just say anything that a lot of the things that I've gotten into after I've met her and she's been a part of my life have been because of she's been a part of my experience. I mean, how could I say that I would have still gotten into some of these things without her, right? Like this mastermind, right? The abundance. How could I say that I would have found it if I would have never met her? I mean, she's essentially altered all the trajectories of my life since that point, right? It's like they say, there's infinite versions of you, right? Happening. It's just which one do you pursue? If I really had to bring it down, to, okay, there's this one specific thing that she introduced to me. It's probably one of the most rewarding things was backpacking, all right? I had traveled before, but usually you travel to a place and you stay remotely there. Where with her, after I met her in Cambodia, and then a few years, yeah, a year later, we decided to kind of start to bring our lives together. We both were craving for more travel and more getting out there. And I met her while she was backpacking. And then I was like, oh, that sounds really cool, right? She was doing Southeast Asia. And at the time, she and I were both watching the same documentaries in different parts of the world. She was in London, I was in Miami. We've both became vegetarian, and we're like, ooh, India is like a mecca for vegetarian food, right? And my brother had just traveled in India for quite a long time, and he was saying it's very inexpensive. It's very easy to travel around. So yeah, we went backpacking, uh, and I would say that that's one specific thing that I don't know I would have done if it wouldn't have been for her. So for sure, I think that's one thing she got me into. That's been a game changer, right? It goes back to the beginning of our conversation. The more you get out there in the world, the more cultured you are, the more experiences, different foods, different ways of living, the more you appreciate life, the more you have gratitude, the more you have a comprehensive view of what life really is, right? Not just the little bit that we live, but there's people that live way, and I can say this from experience in India. I mean, there's a level of poverty that's astronomical, and yet these people would still sometimes see me, and they see me with a book bag, they see me traveling. I mean, there's obviously a certain amount of money that's necessary for this, and they would still invite me into their home. And they have, I mean, sometimes so little, and they're like, "Hey, we got some food. Let me make you a tea," right? And it's just amazing. It really, really humbled me in the sense to say that being a good person doesn't take much. Just seeing somebody, bringing somebody in, having a conversation. But without drawing it out any further, please share with me.
I want to reflect on that point um quickly because I wonder if the less you have, the more willing you are to share what you do have because it's a reminder that you have enough that you can give and it doesn't diminish. You're not so on the brink of starvation, right, that you have to hoard that. And it's a very ironic thing that, that's where you find that type of generosity in the wealthiest countries in the world. We suffer from scarcity and are not as generous, and we post it on social media and everything, especially this time of year when we're giving and giving and giving, and so everybody knows, right? And that's not it's not what it's all about. Just FYI. If I publish it soon and anyone listens, that's you're doing it wrong. There's no right or wrong. I'm not telling you. You can tip the barista. You can give as you want. There is no right or wrong, but that's not in the spirit of giving without recognition. Yeah, things I've learned from, so what is something you would have never gotten into but did because of Heather? Fatherhood is one. She brought our son into our life, which led us to
Amazing.
move from Asheville, North Carolina to Denver, Colorado to be closer to the in-laws here. And secondly, also the mastermind group we're in, GoBundance, she gave me the Tribe of Millionaires book a couple months into dating and said, you should join because I can't, because there was not a GoBundance woman at the time. And she knew personally Mike McCarthy, one of the founders, and spent some time with him through an ex-boyfriend of hers in his home in Silverthorne. So that led me to so many things, and yeah, being surrounded by a whole nother level, and to you, tying back to you, to us backpacking together
Yeah.
a month and a half ago. So grateful for those and so many other things I could mention, but I would say that the first most important thing is being a father,
That's
uh,
amazing one.
and then a few levels down from that is joining this amazing tribe of men who's elevated me tremendously over the last couple of years. So, and brought a lot of play and adventure, and that that's one of the things. And I think what's interesting. I'll just say when Heather told me about this men's mastermind group, and I did a little bit of research about what it would be like. I think there's something that I resist around the country club mentality, around echo chambers and monocultures and being surrounded by people who all think alike. And that was my perception. And I also approach this as I've said many times, what do I get out of this versus what can I give? And ultimately when I joined, I realized I can bring a lot to the community and it's not a monoculture. So that, I mean, and that's how it's played out, that I've had tremendous conversations. I have another one this afternoon with a member of the community, and it's certainly not a monoculture. I learn a lot from every interaction, stretching my mind, not just echoing what I think. And I think any type of organization that you join like this, in addition to asking what you bring, it's kind of like going to college, that you don't just pay the tuition and then you get some result. You don't pay the tuition, you get a diploma.
Mhm.
You go to class, you enroll in classes, you go to the class, and you don't
Mhm.
enroll in 20 classes in a semester. You enroll in 4 or 5, and you
Mhm.
go to every one. And so, diving deep, choosing, and again, you may not know. You may jump in one and you're like, no, I don't want to study that. Right. I want to go in this direction. I want to major in something else. But, and going to office hours. And I mean, I was a good student. So I did all these things, but, instead of cramming for the exam, actually, studying throughout the semester and just participating in a big way. And that's how you maximize the experience, I think, of anything like this. So,
For sure. For sure. Yeah. Funny because you were fortunate enough that she gave you the book. GoBundance was one of the few things in our relationship that we didn't agree on when I presented it to her. Well, we were also financially in a bit of a different position. I had recently had an accident, an airplane accident. And when I presented it to her, she's like, I don't know. I don't know if this is it. And it was one of the few times in our relationship where I still made the decision because I knew it was what was best for me. And luckily, she's what also reflected that and said, hey, look, I don't understand it, so I don't really believe it, but I believe in you and I trust you. And if this calls out to you, please go for it. Right. So, and luckily it was, I came from old relationship habits was everything needs to be in agreement, where it was like this time I made this decision and said, yeah, you know what? Even though she doesn't agree, there is a financial investment. I do believe it's in my best interest. This is what I need. I need that community. I need that. And what I would like to just frame it a little bit for all the immense gratitude I have for the community is it's not an, because you mentioned it a couple times, the echo chamber. For me, it's an acceleration chamber, is what it is, right? So if you're on the right path, it'll accelerate you in that direction. If you're not on the right path, it will accelerate you to come to that understanding so then you can make the pivot and then redirect, right? Because that's the magical skill that we have. So yeah, it's been an amazing community, and luckily through it, I found you and amazing conversations of play and purpose and people asking the better prompts, right? This is what it's all about, is going back full circle. How can we better prompt our lives, our friends, our community to ask the question that gets the recipient to just think a bit further and say, okay, more than the answer, what's being said here? What's something that we can connect with, right? Looking for the red Jeep in each person we meet, right? Looking for those ways to connect and say, hey, like, oh, look that haircut. I remember I used to have that haircut, right? When I was 23 years old, right? And then all of a sudden there's a conversation there. Oh, yeah. Well, what else were you doing when you were 23? Oh, yeah. Well, I was, I just come out of playing marching band and I was it. Instead of finding that one thing to repel and to distance, um, yeah, it's curiosity and kindness. Those have been my big themes. Yeah, play, purpose, all of this, and just somewhere between it. There's a big magic. And if we could just continue to be this reflection that we are and show others that they can do it as well, right? All of a sudden they look like, ooh, well, actually, you can be quote unquote successful, like have your family health, your household, the things that you're doing, and be having fun and enjoying it. Like you can have your cake and eat it too, right? So who said that you can't? Like, no, I choose not to listen to that. I want to have my cake and eat it too, right? Why not? Right? So yeah, it's been awesome. I love this dialogue that we have, and I look forward to doing many, many, many more. I
Absolutely.
see.
Absolutely. I'm gonna pose a question to you and then just say something and then I want you to answer. I said my sort of theme, my intention for the first quarter of 2026 is to play more and really lean into that, and we've already had some conversations around that. So I'm curious what yours is. So think about that for a moment. And I have been doing over the last probably 5 or 6 years what Tim Ferriss suggests of like a past year review. I actually posted a podcast last year, earlier this year, with someone here in Colorado, a friend of mine named Samantha Altieri, um, talking about our process of doing that. And we were just on a call. I think you were on that call with Jamie a couple last week
Yeah.
when he talked about his very succinct version of that. And the Tim Ferriss version is you go through the calendar basically and identify the 80/20, the 80% of things you want, or the 20% of things that brought 80% of the joy, kind of a Pareto principle.
Mm,
And how can you create more of those experiences, those peak experiences, spending time with those people, doing those activities more in the next year. And then vice versa, some of these things that brought negative energy or negative experiences, how can you ensure you have obviously less of that? And I did both in the last week. I take so many pictures, especially because I have an adorable son. I had to get a new phone with more storage capacity because I had filled up the drive and my phone, and so I actually had to go on my computer for the first half of the year and then my phone for the second half of the year. And it is interesting because I'm just contrasting these because when you go through your calendar and you're looking at words, it evokes thoughts for me. And when you go through pictures, it immediately for me evokes emotion. And so it's an interesting process. I don't think it would be as beneficial to do them in opposite order because once you've already felt the thing after you've thought of or before you've thought, it wouldn't work as well. But realize my big takeaway from this, stop bearing the lead, is I am rich. And I don't mean in financial terms at all, which I'm doing okay in that regard. But the people and the experiences and the memories I've created just in the last 12 months, I have a really, really rich life. And it's been a difficult year, to be honest. Like there have been highs and lows and things I've been anxious about and times of some mild depression and things like that. And it has not been an easy year, but looking back on it, I just light up so many. I mean, Jamie asked to provide one photo, and I was like, "I can't just do one." I mean, I wrote down categories of that I'm gonna put together whole, like, slideshows for, even if it's just for myself, and one is play, and one is friends, one is family, and it has been such a rich year. Um, I think it's really a beneficial exercise for anyone to do because sometimes we forget, and these, if you are like me and take pictures of things, it's or I would encourage people to take more pictures so you have these memories that
Hmm.
that you can look on, and you might remember it, but to see a picture that, it just brings up something that is really, really valuable.
Yeah. Yeah, very beautiful. And it's a good reminder, actually, as I'm starting the week to put that down. It's a great time to be doing that as well. Yeah, because we tend to forget, we tend to live in the gap and look forward, right? And not look back enough. And I definitely it sometimes I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, like this life, people would kill to live this life, right? Do some of the things that I did, and I just, wow. So yes, indeed, we are very fortunate. We are very grateful. It is great to have these reflections and these prompts again. So a really, really great prompt, and thank you for reminding me.
Yeah, one quick thing on that. I mean, I said to Heather a month ago, like when I was very, very stressed, we bought a new house and, just a lot of changes. And I just realized, I woke up one morning and realized if I was dropped into this life I have right now, I would be ecstatic. Are you freaking kidding me? I get all of this?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
But we don't walk through life that way, right? And we would probably, like, spontaneously combust if we had that kind of ecstatic energy every day, right? But it is good to have some kind of practice or reflection that we get that in doses so that we remind ourselves how beautiful life is.
Yeah, I would even say as just as a reference to that spontaneously combusting, if we could just keep 80% of it, right? In the breathwork exercises, sometimes when they have us hold our breath, he says, hold 80% of your breath. He said, don't hold 100% because then it gets uncomfortable. You can't really hold it for long enough. So I think there is something to keeping that presentness, right, of where you are, right? And of really, really great way to reflect on it. And I guess I don't know if I'm just repeating myself here, is the reflection backwards, right? Or what the prompt was at the band mastermind, right? It One of my biggest takeaways was that is that we are living the good old days right now. These will be the days when we're in our 70s and 80s with our grandkids, and we'll be like, oh man, you know, at one point I was sitting there on a podcast with another Michael with three first names, and we were having a magnificent conversation reflecting on how amazing and fortunate we are to be where we're at right now, right? It's like where they say, like, everybody's got their problems and they think their problems suck. But if you go sit at the table with everybody else and everybody throws their problems in the middle, most probably you'll be like, oh shit, you'll take all your problems back. So having that appreciation for where we are now, right? So somewhere there between the play, the purpose, and present, right? There's something about just being here. The present is a present, is a gift. So keeping that front of mind is magical because it just keeps us in the highest vibrational energy and magnetizing only more of that positivity. Because yeah, I mean, I just think about it where I am right now. I'm like, my office is is a room in my house that I get to look outside and see palm trees and see coconut trees and I get to see birds and I'm like, what? Who gets to have this kind of an office? but but yeah, it's indeed an amazing life we get to live. And to go back to your original question, tension for Q1, I've been going, I've been bouncing off extremes, right? This last quarter, I've really upped my level of play and activity, right? And it's been amazing. And arguably, Aura would tell me it's been too much. I haven't spent enough time recovering, right? But I've just been having so much fun because it's like when I find ways to move, when it's like play, tennis, I got back into, I've started playing volleyball, and it's taken me a while to get to this level of activity where it feels fun. I feel active. I feel good in my body. I'm moving. I'm mobile, and it's such an important thing. But I've taken it now where I'm topping out, and I'm realizing, oh my gosh, I'm actually overdoing it. Right? Like there's actually a point where I can actually work out some form of working out 6 or 7 days in the week, and now I've actually done it and I've heard other people do it, and I was like, okay, actually I do need to tone it back down a little bit and find that middle ground. Even though I'm having fun, right, my mind still needs mental energy to be able to continue to do the coaching that I do and to help others. So Q1 will be awareness and balance. So continuing to build the brand awareness, getting in front of people, speaking in front of people that are willing to listen, to share, and having that balance between the now, what I'm working for now, and what's towards the future. Having that balance, right? Because the play is now. Like, I love the play. When you're in it, you're in that tennis match, you're in that you're not thinking about anything else. You're just so there. You're so present and continuing to build and grow and evolve, right? Like our souls need for the future, for helping others, for continuing to expand our reach for sure. So for me, it's awareness and brand. I'm sorry, awareness and balance.
I love that. Yeah, and I think when we talk about balance, you talked earlier about zooming in and zooming out. And as a physiologist, I'll use the analogy of, and you mentioned your aura, I'll use the analogy of like our blood glucose, and if you were looking at, a very narrow range of like 30 minutes or something, and you just happened to look when you ate something
Hmm.
anything that puts your blood sugar out of, the very narrow band that it prefers to be in. You might freak out. You might say, "What is going on?" Right? But then you zoom out enough, and it's noise that just you don't even notice. It's not an aberration. It's not a bug. It's a feature, right? Like that. It's necessary. Like we would not be alive if you didn't have that ability to right to oscillate.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and so yeah, with everything, it's about this yin and yang and this
Mm,
right, and not trying to be static, right, not trying to keep something up, not trying to always go 100% or
hmm.
zero. It doesn't have to be black or white. That we live in the gray area. That's where the beauty of life is.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, exactly. We're surfing the waves, finding that balance is just finding a more sustainable wave that can continue, right? You can't go out every day and ride the biggest freaking wave, 50-foot wave every single day, right? You can't go hard and do the same intense workout every day, go do that hit workout. Right? So it's just it's like you said, riding that wave, riding that flow and finding that sustainable kind of balance, right? And for each person it's different, but what's the balance of what makes you happy versus what's the balance what makes everybody else happy, right? I will I I'll share this one um as my gift for this one. If we didn't pack enough into our our
Yeah,
our supposedly 1 hour 15-minute riff, but I don't know how the camera's doing well with this or not, but the
I
true
can't see
meaning
it.
of
I
life.
can't see it now. Move it over to where your head is now. Nope, other
Okay,
way.
okay,
Yep, yep.
okay. So
We are
you're welcome
visitors
to
on
read it.
we are visitors on this planet. We're here for 90 or 100 years at the very most. During that period, we must try to do something good, something useful with our lives. If you contribute to other people's happiness, you will find the true goal, the true meaning of life. The Dalai Lama.
Yeah. Um, so as we have God and life within us all, and we can and realize that the bigger fulfillment is in being able to give that back and be able to help and serve others and remind them, empower them, inspire them, right? People do things normally from desperation or inspiration. So let us be that inspiring force. Let this conversation fall on some ears that may see that there are so many more things that we can connect on and that we can support each other up on instead of boxes and labels and definitions that we could separate each other with. So,
I'm gonna end, and we're really gonna end here. I'm gonna end with a quote by another philosopher, the rap artist Macklemore, the very eloquent philosopher. You mentioned the good old days, right? And he has a song, "The Good Old Days," and I pulled up the lyrics, and he says, "Wish I go back." Well, it starts off, "I wish somebody would have told me, babe, someday these will be the good old days." And then he says later, and this is what I want to really highlight, because someday soon your whole life is going to change. You'll miss the magic of the good old days. Wish I didn't think I had all the answers. There's a couple other lines. Got up the courage to ask her. Wish I would have gotten out of my shell. Wish I wouldn't have worried what other people thought and felt comfortable in myself. And I think at the two, in addition to the curiosity, I want to add another C word, which is confidence. Right. And so I think in a way, these are the balance points, the yin and the yang of having the confidence to share your ideas, right? Having the confidence to speak up, to speak out, and simultaneously the curiosity and the humble nature, right? To accept that not everyone's going to follow what you think, right? And that there are times when you should shut the fuck up. and not share what you think, right? So speak up and shut the fuck up, right? Simultaneously. And that's where the nuance of wisdom,
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
comes from. But you get in that wisdom by taking the chance, right? And realizing now is all we have.
And from the dying, the wishes of the dying is you regret the things that you didn't do versus the things that you did do. Yeah, have the confidence to speak up, and then the curiosity to shut the fuck up. That's such a great way to I could put it. Oh man, yeah. And I'm gonna have to go look at those lyrics from the Macklemore Good Old Days because yeah, I wish I would have known I didn't have all the answers, and I wish I would have cared less about what people thought. Those two things right there will humble you and take you very far in life. So great lyrics, great way to finish, great way to drop the mic, and yeah, and leave us on such a good note for the next time we meet. Yeah, this is awesome.
Absolutely. Well, this is so so rich. I don't want to keep it in the archives long, so or put it in the archives. So I'm going to
Yeah,
get
please.
this out soon, and yeah, it's give people something to listen to while driving or flying to where they go. We filled 2 hours here of with amazing stuff. So I'm so grateful to sit down with you this first time, and again, hopefully first of many. Thank you
For
so much.
sure. Thank you, MJD. I appreciate you. Thank you for your time and amazing opportunity to share together. And yeah, looking forward to the other ones because we can keep doing this for sure. It's too easy.
Absolutely.
You take
Absolutely.
care of yourself.
You too. Be well, brother. Thanks for joining us today on the first of many conversations between the Michael Brian David and Michael Jared Donovan. If you have any suggestions or feedback, we'd love to hear it. You can email us, hit us up on social media, or comment below. Thanks for joining us.